Please rise for the flag salute.
Oops, hold on.
Council, 13, 2021. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act of the State of New Jersey, adequate notice of this meeting of the Common Council was provided in the following manner. Advance written notice of this meeting was posted on the Egg Harbor City Hall bulletin board. Advance written notice of this meeting was posted on the Egg Harbor City website. Advance written notice of this meeting was sent to the Hamilton Gazette, the News, the Press, and the Current. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and social distancing requirements, the meeting is being conducted via Zoom and conference call. The meeting is also being recorded to air on the Egg Harbor City website and channel 97. Roll call, please.
Mayor Jim Petty. Here. Brown.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Dash.
Here.
Heist.
Here.
Sefton.
Here.
Timbers.
Here.
Trithol.
Here.
Wright. Ritchie.
Here. All right, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from April 22nd, 2021 meeting?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, at this time, I'd like to open it up to public for any comment on any item on the agenda. All right, the public has no comment. I'd like to move on to the mayor. Mayor, it's your floor for your presentation and certificates of appreciation.
Okay, there's one person who hasn't arrived yet, so hopefully she'll be here soon.
Two persons.
Well, the Teamsters aren't coming. Oh, they're not.
So I'll do those first. Is Keith on? Keith Adams as well? No. Okay. So I like to, as mayor, I think I get the most joy out of is recognizing people that do a lot for Egg Harbor City. Volunteers. There's many people here who love Egg Harbor City and volunteer their time and money and talents to do good things for the city. And I'm happy to be able to recognize them. The one recipient tonight is the Teamsters Local 331, Marcus King and Erica Rassman, for organizing the community food drives every Friday for the residents. I think it's like 3 or 4 times a month they organize the food giveaways at the Teamsters Hall. So they did an outstanding job and really came to the rescue of many people who were needing food during the crisis. So I'm going to give this to Meg, and Meg, you will make sure that. All right. So our next award is for Kim and Rich Hess. For those of you who don't know Kim and Rich live actually on New Orleans Avenue. They're my neighbors. But Kim has been involved in Egg Harbor City for many, many, many years. She's a master gardener. She's done gardening at Peace Pilgrim Park on a volunteer basis. Rich they're both recently retired. I know it doesn't look like they're that old, but they are recently retired. And now they devote a portion of their life to A, cleaning up trash, which I love, okay, and B, doing gardening and projects in Egg Harbor City that need to be done. So their recent project, well, not their recent one, but the one that was completed recently, is behind the Boy Scout cabin. Kim and Rich designed, I'm going to just read what it says. They designed that it's a birdhouse and a little flower garden, and they paid for it, and they did all the work for it, and it just looks absolutely beautiful. So Kim and Rich said certificate of appreciation for designing, building, and planting an ornamental flower garden behind the Boy Scout cabin for the enjoyment of the residents of Egg Harbor City. And I greatly appreciate it. The next project they're working on now is replacing the shingles
On the gazebo.
on the gazebo at Peace Program Park. So we're very blessed in Egg Harbor City to have such wonderful people that really care and they do a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm 100% vaccinated, just as
Okay.
a disclaimer.
All right.
Okay, we have a family here tonight to celebrate this event. The next person I would like to recognize is Natasha Collier. Natasha is like my secret angel in Egg Harbor City. She does so many things that nobody probably will ever know about, but she does them because she loves the community, she loves her city, she loves the citizens, she loves everything about Egg Harbor City. And recently, Natasha went door to door throughout the community to get people signed up to get the COVID shot in Pleasantville, which Councilman Sharthall, where are you? Had the pleasure, distinct pleasure of working, and it's still working. So because of Natasha, 70 people plus or minus 72 in Egg Harbor City got the COVID shot for free, and they got transportation to the location. So I want Natasha to come on up here. You can come up, too, guys. Come on. Come on.
Someone was
All right, so I'm just gonna read this. It's to certificate of appreciation presented to Natasha Collier for volunteering her time to go door to door in effort to sign up residents for free COVID-19 vaccinations. And this is for you. And I appreciate it. Oh, thank you. You're a wonderful person.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Since we've been doing all this vaccinations and everything else, our numbers in Pleasantville and our Egg Harbor City have dropped. So it is making a huge difference in the community. So thank you.
You want to take, right?
Don't feel obligated to say anything. You're more than welcome to go. And last, but certainly not least, do you have it turned up, John? Johnny Rupp, who is a frequent flyer here at City Hall, getting awards and recognition and whatnot, but John is the go-to person. Meg can tell you that they need something done. Johnny, can you do this? Johnny does the voting, he does the chairs at the Historical Society, he does the flags, he does, I can't even mention all the things he does, but recently, okay, he spearheaded, well, coordinated, I guess you could say, the restoration of the Boy Scout lodge right on Philadelphia Avenue. Now, I don't know all the history, but I know years ago, the Boy Scouts used to meet there, right, John? Is there anything, come up here.
I have no idea. I'm way
You're not
past the
that
Boy
old, right?
Scouts.
You're not that old.
Yeah.
So John did a great job, and for anyone who doesn't know, we now have electric, we have gutters, we have new logs, we have a new roof. What else?
Locks on the door.
New locks on the door, and soon to have maybe heat, we'll see, like a fireplace or whatever we're working
Now
on.
it's summertime. You don't need
We don't
heat.
need it now, but we might get. So hopefully we can use that building for something productive, like maybe meetings or whatever.
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus.
We used to use it for Santa Claus.
Yep.
That foundation
And the Boy
5 years
Scouts,
ago.
I remember, used to sell Christmas trees every night, so I'm going to read this, and this is certificate of appreciation presented to John Rupp for spearheading the refurbishment of the Boy Scout cabin on Philadelphia Avenue and his countless hours of volunteerism in Egg Harbor City. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Anybody want to say anything done? Thank you.
Okay.
See you.
Thank you.
You gotta make room on that one.
While the mayor's organizing everything, on behalf of the city council, I'd like to congratulate all the recipients of the medal. And we thank you and appreciate you. So, Mayor, if you want to continue with your report.
Sure. Some good news, the American Water had some grants out for volunteer groups in Egg Harbor City. So I decided that I was going to apply for a grant for the fire department. And the Chief Kinsley said that he needed hoods. I'm not sure what they're called. We have some firemen here that go over, what are they?
They're called
Hoods?
no max hoods.
Okay, Nomax?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chief needs Nomax hoods for his officers, and if anyone remembers the fire we had a few weeks ago at Foreman's, I can see how they can be very useful in protecting the firefighters. So we applied with his help and, you know, his input, we applied for the grant and we received a $2,000 grant to buy the hoods for the fire department. So that's a step in the right direction for American Water being a part of our community. So that was a good thing. Also, the county, we had a few meetings with Aaron Hoffman about what was going to be done with the Clark's Landing and Clark's Landing Road. It was bad or whatever. So one of the things we did was that we asked the county, I wrote a letter to the county to ask them if they could trim the brush away and the trees and things like that down Clark's Landing and also down Clark's Landing Road, which is really San Francisco Avenue somehow, but we don't know how. So that's been done. It looks really good. The residents are very happy, and so are the people that use Clark's Landing. Also, the veterans are going to have a memorial service. We're not doing the parade this year because obviously we didn't get enough notice in order to plan for it, but it still will be a great celebration. We're going to have Cedar Creek Band there. We're going to have Cedar Creek Choir there. We're going to have someone dressed up like Abe Lincoln there. I think the flyer's out, but if anybody needs it, I'll make sure it gets on Facebook. But it should be out somewhere. I think, and also they're having a pancake breakfast this Saturday too, and eggs. So if you can make it, they're asking everyone to bring a wreath to place at the cemetery. And normally we place one at the Lincoln Park too. And Steve and I did that together last year. I have mayor and council wreaths that we reused. So if anybody would like to do that, we can set a time and go do it and put the wreath out. But it's also the formal ceremony will be at the cemetery.
You have a date and time for the ceremony?
It's 29/30, the 31st, which is Monday, and that's at 11 o'clock. So everybody is welcome. So let's see here. I also have the late, I usually do the, I'll save that one for last. Chef Andre, who was giving out free lunches at Lincoln Park, he is returning again. Apparently he has gotten a new truck and it's self-sustainable. We don't have to get a tent or anything like that. So he can serve his food right out of there. So that's a good thing. And that's going to start on May 26th. And then it'll be every Wednesday after that. And then also we are going to do the, I guess everybody's kind of heard by now that we have a Monday, we're going to do shots in City Hall. So anyone who needs a COVID-19 shot, they're going to be using the Moderna or the Johnson & Johnson. And you can come to City Hall on Monday and get your shot. So Meg, did you want to talk about that?
Just it's from 9 to 1. If you can we were trying to give the county an idea of how many people will come, and we do have a list going. You can just show up, you don't need identification. That's it, it's from 9 to 1.
Is there an age limit, May? Because I know,
18 and up.
okay, because I know they just opened it up for kids, so
Yeah,
that way.
this particular one is 18 and up. I don't know if it's a different shot for you, but when it was announced, that's what we were given by the county, 18 and up.
Pfizer, which they don't have right now.
Yeah, this is Moderna and the
J&J.
Janssen,
So
which I think they
Pfizer
just
is-
made.
Pfizer's the only one that's that mega site.
Oh,
Just so people don't show up with their kids.
But we will, like, if anybody, we're lining up like outside and we're gonna set up the room, they're gonna come here and get the shots, so. Right now, I think we have like 40 people on the list, so. So we're hoping to get it out to the communities. We're getting it translated into Spanish as well, so.
did you get any, calls yet, Meg?
That's what I was saying.
I did get it translated to Spanish. I
Okay,
had
you did
sent
put it out,
I had
okay. I know
sent
we
it-
were, I didn't see that, but,
Yeah, what happened was Yvette Ortiz from the school, she translates everything for the school, so I sent it to Adrian and she approved it to be put out, so they would put it out to their parents.
right now we have 30 on this. Also homebound, if you know anyone in homebound, if you get the number to the address and name to me, I'm sending it to them and they're hoping to visit them that day. If there is anyone in Egg Harbor City visiting them that day while they're here, but some people have called already, so they've already gone to their homes because they had the
Meg,
name.
did anyone reach out to Rittenberg Manor to let?
I was gonna say that. I did talk to the manager of Rittenberg Manor yesterday and I sent her the information. So she's distributing it to everyone. I was also hoping it would get to the Harbor City and Philadelphia Avenue apartments, so
Yeah.
I'm sure we're working on that.
Okay, so I guess, I did send it out to city council that the school's budget is 11 cents over. They are gonna have an increase of 11 cents for 2022. Do you
I
want
was
to
gonna
speak
say,
about that?
I was just gonna say that it won't affect this year's budget, it'll be for next year.
2022. So I did send a link for the PowerPoint, the budget presentation, which they usually have, and apparently you can go on the website and read the budget, the user-friendly budget. It wasn't on there last week, but it should have been updated. So that's gonna be a big issue next year. So the lake report I will do real quick. I did wind up getting my numbers together for, I usually do a P&L for the lake, and even though we're not a profit organization, we're a city, we don't really make a profit, but it's always good to know to see if your department is on track with what they spend and what they take in. So the lake always winds up doing very well. So the total surplus, I guess, so the appropriations for the lake were 56,790. The revenue was 78,718, and so we wound up being ahead $21,920. So even with COVID and the loss in revenue that we experienced, we still stayed on budget to make sure that we didn't spend more than we took in. So that's the report there. Also, everything's pretty much ready for the lake. Public Works has been working hard out there to get everything done. The lifeguard stand was painted. The stand, Kathy Maldonado, the stand lady, she's in there now. She's done a wonderful job cleaning the stand. It looks beautiful. And she's really excited about what she's doing, and hopefully everybody can go out and visit, maybe, have dinner there or whatever. And all the lifeguards are hired and in the process of ordering the uniforms now and getting the schedules ready for Memorial Day. So we should be good to go. Can't think of anything else, but if anybody has any questions about that, I can answer. And I guess last but not least, the only thing I would like to talk about maybe with Ryan or someone, that we have a lot of grants out there that we really have to apply for, and it's really hurting my brain. And I don't want to keep following up on this, but I'm going to say what they are. It's the Sustainable Jersey ACE grant, which Jody, you didn't feel that we would get again since we got the $10,000, but I don't see, I thought in the letter it said that we would be able to get it, but is it because we didn't spend money yet?
Nanette talked to someone there and it looks like we should be able to apply. We just have to send them an email to let them know that we need an extension on the current grant. So hopefully we can maybe still apply for it.
Okay, good. And then there was a Green Acres grant, I think that Ryan, you and I talked about. Do you remember that one or no?
Yeah, the city has not traditionally gone after Green
Right.
Acres programs because there are really heavy restrictions with that funding source. So
So we are not gonna pursue that one then?
that would be my recommendation.
Okay, so the two important ones, well, not more important than transportation grants and CDBG, but we have the recreation grant and the urban recreation grant. Now, where do we stand with that and who's gonna apply for the grants?
The two resolutions are on for
They're on
tonight.
good tonight.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we're working on the grant. So the deadline is like a week and a half from now, and then the other one is due the first half of June. Yeah, I'll send you stuff shortly.
Okay, and then the transportation grant, is that on here? Are we talking about
The
that? too?
local aid, so that one, the deadline is July something, so we gotta pick a road and go through that.
Okay, well, my recommendation, as always, would be the 200 block of Washington Avenue and 300 block, and anybody who has not seen those blocks, please go look at them because they're deplorable. And I said it many times that if I was a resident on those blocks, I'd probably be in City Hall every day begging them to do those streets because they're just horrible.
Yeah,
Are you right?
we've
Am I right?
applied for CDBG funding for those two blocks for the last 4 years. And we were very successful with the CDBG program up until the last 4 years. And somebody else took over the program, the former director of that program retired, and we have not been successful at all and not gotten very much information out of the program. So, yeah, I mean,
But what about the transportation grant?
well, that's what it says. So that one's eligible, the entire municipality is eligible for that locally. The CDBG, the block group is just this couple of blocks, essentially from City Hall to Atlantic Avenue, north of Philadelphia Avenue. So we tried to just focus that money here and use the state aid money elsewhere. But at this point, given that, that we haven't gotten the last 4 years, I don't know if we could ever count on that again. So it's probably not a bad idea. If that's the next priority street, let's just apply for that for local aid. And we
The
don't.
transportation grant?
Yeah, I'm
So-
calling it local aid.
so
That's the same
what-
thing.
I know we got money for the 100 block of Washington Avenue. What's the status on that?
Through what?
Didn't
program?
we, when
I don't think we ever got it.
we didn't
Yeah,
get
no,
it?
that was the one.
That was the one we didn't get.
That's one that we applied to CDBG. We
We
did the
did
200 and 300 blocks 2 or 3 times in a row, and we didn't get them a couple years in a row. So we said, okay, let's do the 100 block, and we still didn't get it. So that one, yeah, we haven't gotten a formal response, but we applied over a year ago. So I'm pretty sure.
Well,
we're
the
gonna get it.
CDBG, isn't that income?
It's
related,
community
so-
development block grant. This is, like I said, that block is the block that qualifies. The last couple times we applied, they discussed, the potential to doing salary surveys where you literally have to walk door to door and everyone lives on the street. It's kind of a headache. We've not done them. I mean, we can look at doing them going forward, but every previous year we applied and said, look, this is a pedestrian corridor. The city has an active park down here. The apartment complex is right at the other end. This is, where people are coming back and forth, both to City Hall and to the park. And then we got money numerous times that way. But I guess they're evaluating things differently now, so.
Well, the thing, we apply for our own CDBG because we've been successful. And
Correct.
you're telling me we're not successful now?
We have
So
not
I
been.
would probably recommend at this point in time, we join with the county like every other municipality does
Yeah, that's a
and-
possibility.
and try to get some money if you don't think we're gonna be successful.
I mean, we can reach out to the program coordinator again, but like I said, he has not been particularly helpful the last couple of years, so.
Because they do the application, they usually send a letter asking if we want to go in. I haven't gotten that yet, I don't think, right? Meg?
For this year.
I don't think that, Meg, did we get any?
I don't know, unless Jody got it, I don't know. I did not.
No, it usually comes addressed to me, so you would probably get it. But- So I think maybe that could be a possibility, because we really do need the money, our streets are.
Well, that'll guarantee you get the money, but the county typically spends it a little differently.
Okay.
So you may not have the same flexibility. That's why we stuck with what we had. We got every other year, we got enough to pave at least a whole street. And we could do that. The county sometimes allocates it towards housing and other things that the program is eligible for. So, we can take a closer look at what the county's program offers and how that's geared and see if that makes sense. I mean, at some point, getting money to do things that weren't necessarily on your agenda is better than not getting anything. So,
When's that due again, right?
The CDBG ones are due, I think, like late summer. That is the most intensive application too, by far.
Okay, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, moving on to council committee chair reports. I'm gonna start with safety because finance and redevelopment is pretty lengthy report. Safety, Councilman Tristoff, you have anything?
No, I was still on leave
Okay.
due to the COVID.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Councilwoman Heist, highway?
Yeah, been talking to Keith, they had the public work guys go out to Hay Road, they, raked the road, they filled the road, I think he said 6 or 7 loads of dirt. They took out there to fill in all the potholes, and the road looks really, really well, or really good, so, he's very pleased with that. They're getting the lake ready, like Lisa said. We're trying to get another dumpster. I've asked him to try to get another dumpster out there because it seems like when we hit the middle of the week, the trash is overflowing the dumpster and ACUA doesn't get there at the right timing. So I'm trying to get him to get another dumpster out there so the trash isn't on the ground, it's in the dumpster. We got the grant, I think Rutgers grant for the playground, the Rotary Playground. However, the bid came in $1,000 higher than the original bid from what they quoted us. And then by the time we got approved for the grant, it was $1,000 more. So we have it out getting some more quotes to see if we can get it down into what, because the Municipal Alliance is, the Coalition is going to pay for that. So we're trying to get it down to what they have budgeted to do that. We are looking to put a fence on the backside of Peace Pilgrim Park from this end all the way over with a gate on the corner of Liverpool for dogs, instead of them being in Peace Pilgrim and destroying the gardens and being in the streams. We're looking to move them back there. The idea with the committee when we met the other night was to fence it off, put up a sign of rules and regulations, to put in our parks and playgrounds, amend that to have no dogs allowed in Peace Pilgrim. To not make an ordinance yet for the dog park, to try to do it on the honor system of people, have the rules and regulations. We will have, you have to have your vaccine, your dogs, have to be over 6 months old, you have to clean up after them, no smoking, we'll get together, make up the rules and regulations. If within a 6 month period, the rules and regulations aren't being followed on a honor system, then we'll turn around and look at writing an ordinance and making it a paid dog park with a lock on the gate with a code, and then they'll have to come in. And the reason we didn't want to do this originally, because we don't want to make more work for Jackie and Meg and Laura. They have enough on their plates. So we want to try to do it the honor system because there's no rules right now out there. So people are going and doing what they want to do because they don't know what they're allowed and not allowed to do. And I know it's common sense, what you shouldn't do, but sometimes if it's in front of you, then, and we can have right on the board, if it's not, the rules and regulations are not followed, the park will be locked at the city's discretion. And then in 6 months, if it doesn't pan out that they're doing what they're supposed to, we'll look into having a paid dog park where they'll have to have a membership. They'll come in every year and they'll pay for a membership. They'll get a tag like a dog license. And then they'll have to show their shots records, their rabies records, and all of that. But we're hoping it doesn't come down to that because we don't want Meg and Jackie shooting us for giving them more work. So that's our thought right now, but we got a quote on the fence, and the quote for the fence to go from one end to the other with a gate on London Avenue was over $4,000. Yes, all up your chairs. So we're trying to get a few more quotes to try to bring it down because we have to, Rutgers doesn't have enough to help us with that. They were going to, but they don't have to have enough. So we got to get it as low as possible and then see where we can move the money from, if there's anything left in parks and playgrounds or land sales to take this to fruition. So it's all still in the workings, but that's the idea that we're working on right now. And I think that's more than enough. Oh, and we did meet with Dave Ben from the lake last week. So we're all basically on the same page with campground is open. He's got some campers out there already. He had them out there last weekend. So we did meet with him and he's up and running. That's all I have.
Does that cover property, parks, and playgrounds? Yes. Just quick
I
one,
didn't get property.
that's fine. Question about the fence, 6-foot chain link.
4 foot.
All right.
Same as what is around there already.
All right. With the AKC guidelines, does it have to be a 6-foot chain link?
Because we're not making it technically a registered dog park with a fee, I don't know. We can check into it. But we have to
Regulation that would require
Yeah, I thought I saw an email or something from the AKC.
suggest, I think there were suggestions.
it. But AKC is not an enforcement agency,
Yeah. all
Yeah,
right, so
and I
okay.
would think if we had to make it 6 foot, then we'd have to make it 6 foot all the way around that section, and it would cost us 3 times the amount of money.
No, so it's a 4-foot chain link.
Yeah.
All right, do you have anything for property?
George is working on lots of things. He's got lots of oars in the water. There's going to be a public auction soon with a few properties. We're trying to add a few more. Property is going hot and quick in Egg Harbor from what I can say. There's a lot of offers being put in, multiple offers on one property. So it looks like it's, it's starting to really pick up, which is a good thing.
All right, thank you. Councilman Ray, are you on for utility?
Yeah, I've got nothing.
All right, Councilman Dash, code?
Nothing for code.
Thank you. We did have an ordinance meeting scheduled. It had to be canceled because of some things that came to light. Land use board, Councilman Timmers?
Nothing to report. Should be something next meeting, or the meeting is next week.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Clark, school board?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Jeff, Meg?
I have nothing there.
Aaron Haven, Councilman Timmers?
Nothing to report. Should be something next meeting, or again, our meeting is next week.
All right, thank you. And now with finance and redevelopment. So we did have a redevelopment and finance committee meeting. We discussed 5 topics. So one was the cannabis options that was addressed a couple meetings ago. We decided on opting out, but come to a conversation with our city solicitor, we actually had to be specific on which option of the 6 that we were going to opt in and opt out. So we're going to have to revisit that as a committee and then bring it back to council. As Councilwoman Heist touched on, the industrial park lots, it's on the agenda tonight, a resolution, lots 7 and 8, block 1003 are going to be going up for auction. We're going to start with those 2, and there's, I believe, 2 other lots that are semi-contaminated that we're looking into to possibly put up for auction after these 2 go through auction. There's the transit park, which I believe we just touched on briefly, with being in favor of the project, which we did as a committee decide we were in favor of it. The one thing we were against were one-way traffic streets. So we were all in agreement to being open to a 2-way traffic streets with that transit park project. The solar field, which I'm sure Ryan's going to touch on, but I'll touch on it briefly. Property did agree unanimously to move forward on it, correct? And then redevelopment touched on it, and we also agreed to move forward on it. It's going to be a huge cost savings to the city, year to year, 15-year period, so on and so forth. So Ryan, I'll ask you to touch on that more intricately with your report.
Okay.
And then the last thing was a meeting or 2 ago, we spoke about the New Orleans project that was visited in 2019 that got pushed to the side. So after further conversation, to subdivide the 3 lots over there, it's going to cost about $19,000. I had asked George Frick to run comps and give us a fair market value on those 3 lots. I got the email. I received the email late today. I wasn't able to review it in depth. It looks like the lots could sell from anywhere from $20,000 to $33,000 a piece. So after I review that email, I'll forward all that information to the mayor and to all council to review, so we can visit it next year next meeting to discuss further and see where we want to go with that, so everyone can make a rational decision when it comes to that. Other than that, that's everything for finance and redevelopment. If nobody has any questions, we'll move on to our Director of Public Safety.
Thank you. For the time period of
Director
April,
Emmer, are you on?
I believe I am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm there,
Mark,
but
on mute.
I can hear you, Mark. I don't know why they can't hear you, but I can hear you. This is Councilwoman Brown. I can hear you.
okay, well, then at least I'll give you the report, Mattia. For the period of April 18th to May, okay, for the period of April 18th.
No, the sound is saying.
Hold on, Mark, if you started, please, if you could give us a moment, we're having a volume issue.
Okay, can you hear me now, people?
Nope, Mark, I don't think they can hear you yet, honey. I'll let you know when I think they can hear you. I think they're working on it. Can you guys hear them now?
Okay, test.
All right, can you hear me?
Honey, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, for the period of April 18th to May 1st, we handled 1 burglary, 2 frauds, 1 simple assault, and 1 theft. There was 107 traffic stops, 38 of them resulted in the issuance of 78 summonses. We had 6 alarms that we handled. We had 4 domestic disputes, 12 EMS problems, 9 firearms apps, and we handled 7 public services. I think that thing that I was glad to see was this is the first period since we lost the 4 sheriff's officers. And when we look at the output and activity from our officers, they stepped up, and it's the same amount of activity as it was with the extra 4 people. So they did step up when the other people left and picked up a little bit. I was glad to see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Anybody have any questions for Director Emmer?
I do, Mark. Are the officers out patrolling the campground in the lake area now that the campground is open? Have they put that on there?
Yep, and every shift they go out there at least once. They try to patrol through it twice. And what they're doing is so that we can track that, they're punching a card each time they go through, which will show us what time and how many times a day they went through to keep it up. I check that every day to make sure that they're keeping up a patrol out there.
All right, because I was out there today and there were 2 young men on motorcycles, and I told them that, we had an ordinance, they couldn't be out there, and if the police caught them, they could,
Yeah, motorcycles are allowed out there. The ordinance says quads aren't allowed out there.
thought it was recreational vehicles.
It says, I don't know, the ordinance said specifically quads. It
So
didn't.
dirt
address
bikes were allowed out there?
Pardon?
Dirt bikes, they were dirt bikes.
Again, I mean, were they on the roads or in the campground?
They were parked in the parking lot that was opened up, and they were dirt bikes.
I would say if they're in the parking lot and they're driving on our roads, then they're going to be illegal and we can stop them and tow them.
Okay,
But
what they told,
campground-
what I asked them, I said, if a cop comes out, because the police patrol out here, if they see you could be fined, and they told me that the cop would drive by and wave to them.
They go by and wait. Well,
That's what they told me. Now, I don't know if, they're telling the truth, and they also told me that the property didn't belong to Egg Harbor. So, didn't know who it belongs to, they couldn't tell me that.
so they lied to you about the property being along to Egg Harbor. So my guess is they're lying to you about the police officers.
I wanted to make sure, well, I didn't say they weren't going out there. I asked you, and I told you what I was told, so I just wanted to make sure that, we stepped it up now that the campground is open.
We do, and when we're trying to make a concerted effort to actually stop a few of them and catch them. So, so I think if we get a couple of them and tow them in and write them, the message will get out quickly that, we're not going to allow that.
Right, and I'll check with Keith again to see what the status on the signs are. Have we heard anything on the
I haven't
signs?
heard, Jody, were they ordered?
The signs for the lake, the ATV, the ordinance ones?
I know Keith ordered a couple things for the lake. I'm not sure. If that's
Okay,
it or
I'll check
not.
with Keith tomorrow to see if they were ordered and what the status is to try to get
Okay,
them.
thank you.
Yep, thanks, Mark.
I would like to also add that the quad riding is getting equally as bad in the town, which Mark, you already know about, because I text you all the time about it. And
I'm sorry, say that again, Lisa.
The quad riding within the city limits is out of control. And I know that you know about it because I text you with pictures and everything else. So is there anything being done about that also?
I mean, we are, again, like I said before, we are making a concerted effort. The problem with the quads, as you all know, is that we're not going to chase them. And I understand, you all understand that. That's a problem with chasing them because the city has a great liability if they get into an accident or hit somebody else. We're trying to do the best we can on them. I mean, I will continue to talk to the guys and make sure that they try to do what they can to enforce that. If we can get a make and model of the quad and then find it in somebody's yard later, we could do something that way. The problem is those quads aren't going to stop. They're going to take off. And then we're in a situation of what do we do?
Well, there's a particular route that some of them like to use. I'll discuss that with you at a later date. Maybe you can put someone out there to check.
Okay.
And the sign were ordered. Keith just texted me. My watch just dinged.
All right, thank you, Director Emmer.
You're welcome.
Before we move forward, so obviously there is a volume and sound issue. Councilwoman Brown, are you on?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Councilman Wright, are you on?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Are there only two we're missing?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna revisit item 5 on the agenda, public comment on any item on the agenda. Does anybody from the public have anything? All right, moving on.
Yes, I have a question. Could you give me more details on the grant applications that are going to be applied for at the lake? Like, what are the projects and how much are you asking for?
Okay, they're items number 16 and 17 resolutions. I will, when I get to them, I will answer those questions for you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
This is Councilwoman Brown. Someone had asked me a question about the pole barn and why it was being proposed. If someone could maybe elaborate further on that.
That is,
Okay.
That's the
Councilwoman Heiss will answer that question.
pole barn is being proposed to be put out at Public Works because now that we have sold the water company and the building, everything within that building has to be housed somewhere, and we don't have the room to house it. So Keith Adams asked if we could look into putting a pole barn out there, so that way we can house the stuff from the water company in there, everything that's left over, file cabinets, chairs, desks, until we have use for them. Johnny Rupp redid the log cabin. That has been being used for storage. We need to get this stuff out of there. We can move that out to the pole barn. There's also some sheds in the back here that we had records in that we were having issues with. So anything we need stored, we can put it in the pole barn, as long as, Keith is okay with us. We can't, move everything out there. So that was the reason that we're putting up a pole barn.
Okay, thanks, Donna. It was a question that was asked, so I just wanted it clarified, so that everybody understood, what was going on.
Absolutely. Ryan, Jody, you don't have anything else on that, right? That was,
You covered it well.
okay.
All right. Anybody else from the public have any comments on the agenda?
I think Kim has more avenue. Don, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about the dog park. I know you had said they're putting more wood fence and everything. Is it going to be locked up until that time, or how is this going to work, the transition?
We don't want them in Peace Pilgrim, so we're trying to get this done as quick as possible. So that's the hard part, because if we undo the block on Peace Pilgrim, they're gonna take the dogs back in, and they're gonna undo what you guys did this whole week with all your hard work out there, redoing the gardens and everything. So we're more than likely going to keep it locked until we get through with the dog park, and if not, we're gonna have to figure out a way to keep the dogs out, which would be, we would have to add a line item to our parks and playgrounds ordinance that dogs were not allowed in there, and then we can post the ordinance number, and then the police can enforce it. If we don't have it in an ordinance, the police can't do anything about the dogs being in there. So we're trying to avoid, we're gonna put the line item in there, but we're trying to avoid any issues with people being in there, the police having to police it.
Right.
Once we have the other park open, if there's a dog in there, it's easier for the police to say, hey, they can't be in here, take them over there. But right now, past practice. They've been in there for years, and we have to figure out how to make them still have what they need for their dogs, but still have the beauty of our park. Any question?
No,
Go ahead,
no,
anybody
no,
raise their
question.
hand
I just-
here?
We had a comment, we work at City Hall, we are right next to Peace Pilgrim, we see the activity. I did have a suggestion, it wasn't just my own, about possibly, if you wanted the park open, removing a piece of fence, so people weren't so comfortable taking their dogs off their leash and letting them run. Until we figured out what we wanted, because a lot of people visited Peace Pilgrim not with dogs, and they wonder why it's closed. So that was my suggestion, and he said, like I said, we live it, we are right next to the park every day, and I thought, I mean, it might be a good idea to possibly remove a piece. And people may keep, if they see it's open, they won't let their dogs run free.
The only problem with that would the city be liable if someone falls in the serpentine. Like a little kid falls in there and drowns, since there's no fence.
So that would be an answer for our city solicitor. Answer sheet.
I mean, at this time, are we liable? Oh, you mean like keep it
If
removed?
it's wide
all the
open, it'd
time?
be
Oh,
like
forever.
a
Okay.
swim, like a swimming
Yeah.
pool if the kid falls in there.
Oh, I didn't mean like keep it open forever. I just meant like maybe if the park, I don't know what the hours of the park, does the park have hours? Are they allowed in Peace Pilgrim 24 hours?
It's supposed to be till dusk, I think it says.
Like, there's no lights out there, so.
Turn off the sundown. Turn up the sundown.
But to say there is a piece of fence that is locked.
I agree with you. I think that's a great idea to have it open, but that was.
I just meant until we figure
out.
out we're doing it. If people are missing
Right.
Peace Pilgrim and enjoy the gardens and want to walk your dog, want to pick up after your dog, they're not the problem. They're not the people that has caused this park's problem, you know? So, I mean, we're there every day. We would walk out and lock it. We do everything. So not that we do everything, but we would walk out and lock the gate. But I mean, not that I'm there at dusk, but.
Keith, are you on here still?
Yes.
Is there a way that you can remove a section, or because that's chain link, would that be difficult and wind up being an issue?
I could just take all the gates off for now. It would be a real pain to put it back the right way with chain link. But to remove the gates, yeah, we could remove the gates and put them back at a later date.
Okay,
I think we should check the liability first.
yeah, I think, we'll have Angela check for liability, and then I'll let you know.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
What we were saying, like with the gate, not take it off, maybe open it all day long until somebody's responsibility is to lock it.
Yeah, but something, if you open it, somebody can walk in with their dog and close
You
it.
could actually chain the gate open. You do that too, and then it can be closed.
Instead of removing, yeah.
All right, so we'll have our city solicitor look into the liability of doing something like that. You'll follow up on that.
Because I would say the people that complain to us about the dogs, they're talking about liability.
Well, look and see how it's driven.
To go on without doing anything. So either way, I think there's liability. So if you want to open it, if you want to keep it closed, right?
And right now, the city's not allowing it to go into the slot.
Right.
That's the whole thing. So now we're basically at a standstill. Now we have to figure out if taking the gate off is gonna cause a liability with the water being in there. So should we keep it locked until we can get the dog park done? Or if it's not a liability, then we can take the gate off or fence the gate open and then go a little slower on getting the
Is
dog
it the
park.
same liability like with streams in town though? You know, that's not. You know, like, cause there's a stream over here, the stream's over here, like, they're all city.
Right.
The question, I'm just saying, that's how
That makes sense.
people come to us and ask these questions, so.
May I speak on this subject, please?
Go ahead, Nanette.
I didn't think this was the appropriate time because there's no action being taken today, is there?
No.
Okay, I would really strongly advise against creating a dog park in Peace Pilgrim Park, mainly because of the liability issues. I know you have dogs running all over the place right now, and it's obvious that they kind of destroyed the park. I have a dog, I love my dog, and I don't object to having a dog park, but there's a lot of liability issues that you have to consider. And I don't think Peace Pilgrim Park, that area, is the appropriate place for a dog park. mainly because it's an environmentally sensitive area. You have that creek going through there that leads out to the Mullica River. And I believe, and I'm not sure if it goes into the lake, but you have an ordinance. It's called a stormwater management ordinance that would prevent feces from flowing into the creek. And if you're going to have a dog park there, which is obviously what you have now, it rains and that bacteria goes into the creek and flows through the entire length of the city, width of the city rather, into the Mullica River. So creating a dog park in that location, I don't think is appropriate. You could ask Ryan to give you more detail on that. I know you're in the process of upgrading or updating your stormwater management plan. I understand the Pinelands Commission has put a moratorium on doing anything about that until they come up with their requirements, because we're a Pinelands town. So at this point, and the other question I had was, where are you going to get the $4,000 to erect a fence? You know, there's an expense to it. I've covered issues with dog parks in other localities, and they all have problems. Margate had a beautiful dog park, which was destroyed by the dogs, and it cost them $30,000 to replace the surface of that park so that it's safe for the dogs. You can't just let dogs run around. There's glass in the ground and things like that that could harm their feet. So there's a lot of issues to consider when you're considering a dog park. I would mostly be concerned about the liability issues for the city, because that could cost a lot of money in the in the future. I remember covering a story where a pit bull, and Steve he was testifying at the court hearing, where a pit bull bit one of our prominent citizens at the time because he was running loose in the street. So these are really serious issues. I think you really have to consider. You might want to talk to the attorney about that and get some ordinances from other towns and see what they're doing about their dog parks and how they fund it. Personally, I don't think that as a taxpayer, I want to fund that. I'd rather fund improvements to a park for people, because they're the ones who are really going to enjoy it. So that's just my opinion. You guys can do what you want with it, but I think there's a lot of issues to consider. And I think just rushing into it to appease a few people who you don't even know if they're from town, who use that park for their dogs. And obviously they're not abiding by common sense rules, which say pick up after your dog. And, they actually tore up the grass in the park. And that will happen on the other side of the park. The other thing you need to consider too is the neighbors live on that side of the street. So you think those people that live in that neighborhood want dogs barking and running in that park near their homes? So I would calm down and take your time and really consider it before you proceed with anything. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Galloway. So I'll ask the committee to revisit it and take into consideration everything that you just stated.
Thank you.
Regarding the dog park. So moving on to our CFO report. Jody, if you could, please.
I do. I actually have the year-end balances from 2020. So the ending balances as of the end of the year for all our accounts was $2,702,291.78. And then I just had a couple, one add-on resolution, if it's okay. We just found out the other day that actually Nanette mentioned that the Atlantic County is updating their hazard mitigation plan. And we had participated last time they did their update. Somehow we didn't get notification, but we'd like to participate. So we just wanted to do a resolution that we will participate in the update. This allows us to apply for like FEMA funding. It's a countywide thing. Some of you are probably involved maybe in where you work or something. So if we could just do a resolution to participate in the Atlantic County update.
That's fine.
I'll make a motion.
All right. Second, please.
Second, Brown.
Thank you. Roll call.
Brown,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Dash, Priest,
Yes.
Sefton,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Krykoff,
Yes.
Wright. Wright, Ritchie.
Yes. Is that everything, Jody?
Nanette and I had talked, there is a few years ago, we had what's called a community stewardship improvement grant, which allowed us to plant some trees that we did a bunch on the way into Cedar Creek. We did a bunch over at Lincoln Park and a couple over on Buffalo Avenue. So there is a new round of funding. If the city is interested, there is a 25% match. So just kind of wanted to see what council's thinking before anybody starts working on an application. Also, to be honest, we will need the engineers a little more involved because my life was trees for 2 years and it was very stressful, like worrying if these trees survived, and I am not a tree expert. So definitely we'll need a little bit more assistance from the engineers this time. So let them worry if the trees are surviving for 2 years. So anyway, I just wanted to see if council was interested in applying for that and what you would think might be something. We probably wouldn't have to put the match in until most likely next year once we find out what grant we would get.
When's the filing for that?
That's a good question. Let me check. July 9th. So we don't have to decide this tonight, but if council could think about that and kind of maybe we can come to a consensus for the next meeting or two. I'll send out an email with information about it.
Language on it, please.
Yep.
And could you give us an idea on the 25% match? What size grant are we talking, so we know what 25%?
Last time, our previous grant was for 100 trees and we got a grant of $30,000 last time. So, and I believe 7% of the grant is allowed to be used for engineering and support type of costs. So.
I'm sorry, I had to step away. Did you have a question about that?
No, we have no question. Thank you.
Okay.
Is that everything?
I'm sorry, one last other thing that we'd also talked about, which again, not something for tonight, but just kind of wanted to throw it out there. I'll contact Angela. We have a no smoking ordinance that we had done a few years ago. It was also, it was kind of a big thing. I know everyone's kind of seen those tobacco-free signs that I think either the state or the county put out. But we were just thinking about updating that for some of the new cannabis legislation to obviously not allow that in the parks as well. So if that's okay, I will get in touch with Angela so we can make that change for an upcoming meeting.
Yeah, I think Galloway just did that at their last meeting.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that was something I was gonna revisit with the cannabis option anyway.
Okay.
When we speak on that again.
Okay.
So more likely that'll be something I'll do that with you.
Okay.
This is Councilwoman Brown. I also believe that Wildwood and Wildwood Crest also placed a ban as far as the recreational cannabis in certain areas.
Yeah, I believe it's correct.
Yeah, they just passed in public.
Yeah. All right, Jody.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. Sorry.
Awesome. Thank you. Meg.
The only thing I have is that the drop box for ballots outside for the election, for the primary, that's June 8th, is open, and the county is emptying it they say they're emptying it every day. I've not seen them, but I believe them. So it is open. If people are getting their mail-in ballots, they can be dropped off here, and they are emptying it daily. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you. Angela, City Attorney report.
Thank you, Mr. Rickman. So I was asked by council to review the city charter and figure out what kind of government a Carver city has, when it was started and how we got to the point where we are today. So I pulled the charter from 1858 and we had a bunch of amendments. I found one 1897, 1899, 1963, and early 1900s. And it's very difficult to figure out what we have, what kind of government we actually have.
And as a matter of fact, I'm not the only one who comes to that conclusion. Back in 1977, some of the city asked the state at the DCA to figure out what kind of government a Harbor City had and to figure out how to go about bringing it in line with the state statute. So the DCA basically said that we had two options at that time, was either to get the city solicitor to figure out what kind of government we have and then go from there, or to formulate a committee under the optional municipal charter law, which was never adopted by the city of Egg Harbor, to set up and formulate how the city should go forward, taking into consideration what form of government the city actually has. So I looked up the many statutes that were also passed by the legislature, one of which was actually the municipal charter law, also known as the Faulkner Act, back in 1950, which the city never adopted and never changed their form of government pursuant to that law. And most importantly, the statute which provides for the city form of government, which was, I think, passed in 1987 or 1988. In 1987 and 1988, it looks like what Egg Harbor has was partially grandfathered into the statute. But what the statute also said is, if we wanted to change any of our forms of government, we then had to get in line with the state statute. To get in line with the state statute would mean taking council from 9 members to 7 members and forming wards, because we didn't have that kind of form of government. And that's why I went back to the charter to figure out how we ended up the way we are now. Somewhere along the line, we got 9 council members. Somewhere along the line, we never considered wards. And we don't have wards to this day. All councils elected at large. So one of the other most important things is that the charter and all of the amendments to the charter never provided for a referendum procedure. How you change your form of government, how you change your council, how you change your terms. We don't have anything like that in our code. So my recommendation is, at this point, without getting into a lot more detail, because it's much more complicated than I think I have time for right now. Unless we all want to be here till midnight, I don't think we do. But in any event, I also recommend we form a committee, but this would be a different committee than a charter committee as provided by the Faulkner Act, because we never adopted the Faulkner Act. We never changed the form of government pursuant to the Faulkner Act. So we can't actually form a charter committee. So I recommend we form a committee compromising members of council, the mayor, and members of the public. Some members of the public. You could do 5 or 7, your preference, whatever you'd like to do, to review these charters, to review the state laws, and to tell us, mayor and council, as a body, how we go forward. Do you want to change your form of government? If so, what do you want to change it to? You want to go down to 7 council? If not, you want to still be grandfathered in, which means you don't have referendum power per se. The charter as it is now doesn't allow for many changes, even though you guys did change it. It didn't provide for that, and that's what the state is trying to tell us. We did a lot of changes that we never should have done. So to get to this point is difficult, but we're here now, and perhaps this is the time we can review it all. We can go with the Faulkner Act, we can do mayor, council, administrator, we can do mayor, council, we can do other forms of government. New Jersey has 12 forms of government. And so far, we've considered ourselves as the city form of government, and that's only partially true, because a true city form of government, as it is now in the state, is only 7 council members. It's not 9. But the statute did say that if you had one of these special charters, which we got in 1858, we could keep 9 members. But we also, in keeping the 9 members, we would not be permitted to do anything else in changes in the form of government we wanted to do.
What changes do we want to do? What are you talking
From
about?
9 members to 7 members. And
Right,
going to
because
serve-
the Small Cities Act specifically states that if you do adopt the Faulkner Act 100%, which we did for
Correct.
commercial, this is not a secret. This has been like this
Not
for
to
years.
interrupt you, Mayor, but I don't see where the small cities was ever adopted by the city. We don't have any documents that I was able to find that shows we adopted any part of the Faulkner Act, and I agree with you. If we would have adopted the small cities, that would have been great, but we don't have that.
Well, you would have to go back many, many years. to do
I
that.
did, till
For the
1858
minutes.
until
The
now.
minutes. You went through all the minutes?
I didn't go through all the minutes from 1858, but 1977, apparently, they did exhaustive study in 1977, realized that particularly this doesn't really even down.
Grandfather, we were in 1858.
I say grandfather because the statute that was passed by the legislature in 1987 envisioned that some municipalities like Egg Harbor would not want to change to the wards. And that's another thing you would need to do if you adopted any portion of this is go to the wards. That would be 7 council, 2 wards, and then 1 run at large. But these are all suggestions. But what they said in that statute in 1987 for the city form of government also is in order to encourage municipalities like Egg Harbor to adopt what they considered the true city form of government was that they couldn't change anything. You can't change anything as it is now. You have what you have. So that's why I
Right, because
recommend the committee.
Then you have to go you have to go from at-large council people to
wards.
which you can only live in a certain area.
But that's only one piece of the puzzle. You have 12 forms of government. I think we should review what's viable and what's not. We may not want to continue to be city form of government.
Yeah, we did a study on that. Meg, you have it in your office still, correct? From when
I
you
was
did,
before me, but there
you
wasn't
showed
study
it to
done.
me. You pulled it out once. We did have a committee at one time.
I'm sure you did, but whatever came of it,
And
maybe that was
they
the,
decided, I can tell you what came of nothing. They decided to go to a manager form of government. That's what they recommended, and that never happened.
okay,
So, but the Small Cities Act of 1987 does, if you read it, it specifically says Egg Harbor City, right? And it says you can have an administrator too. So it says a whole bunch of things in there.
it's not, it wasn't a Small Cities Act in 1987, Mayor, I beg to differ with you. In 1987 is what the state changed cities to be. And the way I see it, Egg Harbor City didn't do anything to adopt that statute. What it would needed to have done is in 1987, 88, it would have said, yes, we adopt your statute. We need to incorporate this statute. To do that, you would have had to do an ordinance. We never did that.
Well,
because we never did that.
according to the DCA, right?
Right.
They went
Because
through
we
all
never
the-
did that,
all
well,
the-
because we
all the
never did
minutes.
that, we're not officially state sanctioned city. That's what the DCA was trying to tell us. We had to now decide what we want to be. And once we decide what we want to be, we have to pass the ordinance and go forward from there in order to be in line with the city form of government. So all I suggest is, we have a committee, we look at the Faulkner Act, we decide again, do we want to be part of that? Do we want to be part of the true city form of government the way it exists now, which is archaic? The city form of government, DCA found was a bit archaic in that we have a lot of people. We have a lot of decision makers, which makes it very difficult for us to go forward and make decisions. That's why they streamlined it. And they suggested that Egg Harbor City streamline their form of government.
Right, and that costs money too, and that's probably why we have 9 council people, because each council person serves as a department head. okay? We don't have an administrator right now. We haven't had an administrator for 9 years. So council has had to assume more active role in decision making, as the city clerk has administratively, and as the CFO has administratively, and the mayor has administratively. So if we were to change the form of government, that comes at a cost, because then you have to hire people to be in City Hall to do those things, because you're cutting down the amount of council people.
Well, the committee would have to determine what, if any, cost there would be to change the city form of government. But on the offshoot, the first thing that would have to be done, obviously, would be an ordinance, a referendum. In order to change the form of government, obviously, at some point, you have to put it out to the voters. And the voters would ultimately decide if they want to change in the form of government. It wouldn't be you, it wouldn't be me, certainly. It wouldn't be the clerk, it would just be the voters. And the voters would decide, do we want to stay the way it is, or do we want to change it? Those are the ones who ultimately would make the decision. But I think it would behoove us and the citizens of the city to look at what's been done from 1858 until now and determine, is this still working for us? Is this what we want to do? Or do we want to move in line with a more coherent form of government?
Next question.
Am I not allowed to play with the end?
Comment at the end, please.
So that would be my recommendation, that we form a committee, we look into it. If we want to do it at some point by referendum. If we do it before the election, we can put it to the voters. If you choose to change your form of government, if you don't choose to change your form of government, at least this year, we can look at it again next year. And ultimately let the voters decide if that's what they want for the city. Anybody have any questions?
No, at all. So moving forward, your suggestion would be for us as council to form that committee to then meet with you, or would you?
Oh, sure, I'd be happy to meet with the committee, however you want to form it, members of council, the mayor, and maybe members of the public.
Okay.
If they're interested, they can notify the clerk. If anybody's interested in becoming part of the committee, so we could study it, we could look at it, and then make a recommendation to council somewhere in the next couple of months.
Is that statute what the committee should be made of? Because
No,
No?
the statute is different. You're talking about the charter commission pursuant to the Faulkner Act. But since the city has never adopted the Faulkner Act, I don't think it's appropriate for us to hold a charter commission, because if we were to hold a charter commission, that would have to go on the ballot. And then we'd have to elect persons from the public to be part of the charter commission, which would take more money and more time. So I thought we'd start here to see if we could do it among members of council, with the mayor and members of the public who aren't elected, but could at least review it at this stage and give a recommendation. If they found that, yeah, we want to do a charter commission, a full-blown charter commission, and we want to look at that, then that would have to go on ballot. And then we'd get formal members of the public, elected officials, to be on the charter commission. That's what the Faulkner Act provides. That's one of the ways to do a referendum under the Faulkner Act, which under our charter does not give us the ability to do.
are there any other cities in Atlantic County that operate like this?
Not one.
So this charter committee, as far as individuals that should be on it, would you suggest a number? Would that be up to us? I mean, I don't think we want to pack the courtroom with, 50 people.
I was thinking the mayor and maybe 3 members or 4 members of council and 2 or 3 members from the public, and that should do it. Volunteers, anyone who's interested, could tell Mayor, Meg, and then Mayor can tell us. And then we can meet a few times. This would be a very lengthy discussion, so this would be a long meeting, at least in the beginning. And then once you think about it, it will require a few meetings. 2, 3, maybe 4 meetings.
Okay.
The Faulkner Act is long and complicated, and those forms of government are
And then
something to
come
consider.
back to the governing body with a recommendation.
Correct.
So we'll need individuals who are dedicated and committed to the process, because it's going to be a lengthy one. Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Mr. Engineer Ryan, it's your time.
Alrighty. So we already covered a couple things on the list, the recreation grants, New Orleans Avenue subdivision. We finally got a response on Atlantic Avenue, only took 5.5 months from the Finance Commission. And their response was they asked for a bunch of additional information. So that's awesome. So some of the stuff I asked for, they already told me what the answer is. So I'm a little confused as to why they sent it, but whatever, I'll be working with them going forward, I guess. The solar project. So we reached out to Langston Electric to try to clarify a couple things about this process and that the transmission rate is also reduced from your bill. There's 3 parts to the rate. You need to make sure that 2 of them would come off, not just 1. And they did verify that, but what they said is that they are not currently participating in remote net metering. So I brought that information back to the solar developer we're working with, and he said, well, it's not really up to them. They have to. DPU required them to do it. So they consulted with the attorney that they work with, and they said, we would like for the city to sign an agreement that would be contingent upon approval by Atlantic City Electric, sign the interconnect application, they will submit it, and then they will file with Atlantic City Electric, presumably be denied, and then pursue it with the BPU at no cost to the city. They said, you know, Atlantic City Electric has to be doing this. They can't just ignore it. You know, we'd like to pursue it on your behalf. So if that's something that the city is still interested in moving forward with, I would suggest that we authorize, you know, Angela to start preparing an agreement that would be, again, contingent upon BPU and Atlantic City Electric approval. We would then be able to sign those documents and let them start down the warpath. I told them at the very beginning, I was like, oh, we're not going to war with Atlantic City Electric. That's not our prerogative. But, you know, if you guys want to fight for us to be able to save money, that's not going to hurt my feelings. So, you know, again, that would be my suggestion, that we prepare that agreement.
If, before I entertain the resolution, if you could just touch on the rates and the savings.
Sure. So your rate now, just for the electric without the transmission charge, is like 7.5 cents. Transmission portion is another 6 or so cents. So you're paying 14.5 cents per kilowatt hour. The proposal received was for 8.5 cents. Over the 15-year lifespan of the PPA, which is the max length for PPA, you would save about $500,000. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious savings. It's, you know, pretty easy to get. There's no upfront investment. You know, you don't have to front the money to buy the system. You sign this 15-year PPA, you save money throughout, and then at the end of the agreement, they have to turn the system over to you, and then your electricity is free. You just have to maintain the system as long as you can. So, I mean, it would be a good deal for the city, certainly.
And it is warranted for 25 years, is that what it was?
Yeah, the panel life is typically warranted for 25 years for a production above a certain percentage of the original production rate. So for the next 10 years, you're still going to get a guaranteed amount of production out of the panel. It's probably an 80% threshold. They do decline over time, but it's pretty gradual at first, and then when you get to 30, 35 years, they just sort of fall off a cliff. But you know, you'll get the 15-year savings, and then at least another 10 of guaranteed electrical production out of them. So.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Ryan regarding the solar? If not, somebody would entertain a resolution for us to enter into contract with National Energy Partners, Ryan?
Yes, National Energy Partners.
National Energy Partners.
Is that who's preparing this resolution? Because
I'll work with him. Yeah, well, at this point, it's just authorizing the solicitor to prepare an agreement to engage with National Energy Partners.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Roll call, please.
Brown,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Dash,
Yes.
Heiss,
Yes.
Sefton,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Ritchie.
Yes.
Okay, a couple of things. The tennis courts, the mayor reached out that the tennis courts were beginning to see some premature failure, given that they were just restored recently. We knew that we were going to see some reflective cracking coming up through, because it's not going to address every crack everywhere, and we didn't repave it. Some of the larger cracks do still have the repair. You can see the fabric that's under there, and that's held up really well. But there are a couple spots where they use like a real thin, mortar, for lack of a better term, that they put in to sort of cover some areas and then paint over that. And some of those spots are just falling apart. So I reached out to the owner of the company and asked him to meet me out there to take a look at it. This was not a project that we did, but we're trying to help out. This is something that we do regularly, so we do have the expertise to be able to help out. So I'll let you know how that goes when we're able to meet out there. A couple other things. I got a call from a resident on Baltimore Avenue who's requesting a front access driveway, which would be a driveway out to the avenue rather than to the terrace. There is not a paved terrace behind this house, or that row of houses, really. It's a dirt terrace, and they're at the very end of it. So we generally do not allow, this is in the 100 block of Baltimore. Sorry, should call. So typically we do not allow front access driveways to the avenue. We require that they have access from the terrace, but if they don't have a paved terrace, and if they're at the end of what is, I'm told, a pretty beat up dirt road, it seems like a fairly reasonable request. So I told them that I would bring it to city council, see if anyone had any official objections. If you guys have any questions, problems, concerns, whatever, we could just punt it to committee level and talk about it there and bring it back. If no one really sees any problems with it though, I can just tell her to submit the application and we'll just process it.
Anybody have any questions or concerns with this? Does anybody want to kick it to the committee first? All right, we can move forward with it.
Okay, yeah, we'll tell them, just submit the application, we'll just process it like a normal street opening permit and let them move forward with the driveway.
So no committee, right to.
Okay, very good. That's kind of what I figured, just wanted to make sure. And then the last thing is just that, as Mr. Timbers noted, we will be having the marijuana discussion at the land use board and expect to bring a recommendation back to city council for the next meeting.
Okay.
So that's it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Ryan regarding anything? No? All right, moving into our resolutions. Number 14, this is authorizing a public auction. So City of Egg Harbor acquired title to block 1003 and lots 7 and 8 in 2020. Council of the City of Egg Harbor authorizes that a public auction be held for sale of block 1003, lot 7 and 8, and that such properties be advertised for public auction as attached in the notice. In addition to that, these will have a reserve set on them, I believe at fair market value, and it's a sealed auction, correct? Yeah, sealed auction. So there's no questions or comments on this. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All right, second by Councilman Trithol. Roll call, please.
Brown,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Dash,
Yes.
Heist,
Yes.
Sefton,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Ritchie.
Yes. Resolution authorizing contracts with certain approved state contract vendors for contracting units pursuant to Njdca 11-12A. This states the City of Egg Harbor made by resolution and without advertising for bid to purchase any goods or services under the State of New Jersey Cooperative Purchasing Program for any state contracts entered into on behalf of the state by the Division of Purchase and Property in the Department of the Treasury. There's no questions or comments. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Resolution, and Ms. Galloway, these two will answer your question. Resolution approve application to Njdca for local recreation improvement grant 2021. The City of Egg Harbor desires to further the public interest by obtaining a grant from the State of New Jersey Department of Community Affairs Local Recreation Improvement Grant 2021 program. The governing body desires to apply for a grant for improvements to the city lake and campground, which includes the items below. 1, extending city water and sewer into the campground. 2, upgrade the electrical system at the lake. 3, upgrading, extending the fencing between the campground and the lake. If there's no questions or comments, may I have a motion, please? Roll call?
Brown,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Dash,
Yes.
Heist,
Yes.
Sefton,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Ritchie.
Yes. Resolution to approve application to NJDEP for New Jersey Urban Parks Grant. The New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Green Acres Program is providing grants through the Urban Parks Initiative. The city of Egg Harbor desires to further the public interest by obtaining grant funding in the amount of $500,000 from the state to fund the following projects: city, lake, and campground improvements at a cost of $500,000. There's no questions or comments. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
roll call, please.
Brown,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Dash,
Yes.
Heist,
Yes.
Sefton,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Ritchie.
Yes. Resolution authorizing the application for an acceptance of a grant for the Year 2 Neighborhood Preservation Program. The city of Egg Harbor City desires to apply for, obtain, and accept a grant from the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, DCA, for approximately $125,000 to administer and implement the DCA approved Year 2 Neighborhood Preservation Program implementation plan. If there's no questions or comments, may I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second, please.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Brown,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Dash,
Yes.
Heist,
Yes.
Sefton,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Ritchie.
Yes.
Council President, I just want to let you know that,
I'm
okay,
good.
sorry.
Before I move to number 19, Mr. Sartorio is here. If anybody, if he has some words on that, and if anybody has any questions for him.
Thank you, President, council members, members of the public. Very briefly, grant is a continuation of what we started almost 2 years ago now. Strangely enough, after 2 years of working on the program, we're now just going for a second year of funding, but that's a whole other story. Because of the COVID-19, we did a lot of juggling last year. We also got the grant extended 6 months into this year, so now we're going to be running on a state fiscal cycle rather than the municipal fiscal cycle. But with that juggling around, we shifted programs that would have been done in years 3 and 4 forward. A couple of projects that we had hoped to have underway by now were delayed due to bureaucratic snafus. We'll be gentle tonight. But overall, we've been very successful. We've got a lot of improvements done on Philadelphia Avenue, and we look forward to continuing to get the work done there, and also to be able to get into the other parts of the program that were held up, primarily marketing the area, and also working with businesses to help make improvements to their properties. So thank you for your vote tonight, and look forward to getting it moving forward.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? Any questions for Mr. Sartorio? All right, moving on to resolution, person-to-person liquor license transfer, Vishal H. Incorporated to Veer Sharma Incorporated, 112 Philadelphia Avenue. There exists in the city of Egg Harbor a certain plenary retail consumption license being license number 0107-44-003-006, known as Vishal H. Incorporated, 112 Philadelphia Avenue, Egg Harbor City. Said owners have filed with the issuing authority a letter of consent to transfer said license. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Egg Harbor and the plenary retail consumption license number stated above is hereby transferred to Veer Sharma Incorporated, 112 Philadelphia Avenue, Egg Harbor City. There's no questions or comments. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Brown,
No.
Clark,
Yes.
Dash,
Yes.
Heist,
Yes.
Sefton,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Trithol,
Yes.
Wright, Ritchie.
Yes.
Do you just, I just want to explain, this is a liquor license that we got back in February. The police did the background. They're buying the liquor store on Philadelphia Avenue. All backgrounds were done. Everything went through. The police gave a letter saying it can be transferred. So this is the transfer.
Thank you. All right. Number 20, introduce an ordinance. This was previously spoken at the beginning of the meeting. Ordinance number 6, 2021, capital ordinance of the Egg Harbor City in the County of Atlantic, State of New Jersey, authorizing construction of a pole barn and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to pay for the cost thereof, fully funded by General Capital Improvement Fund. Egg Harbor City is hereby authorized to undertake construction of a pole barn at the Public Works Yard. The sum of $30,000 is hereby appropriated to the payment of the cost of the improvements authorized. Said appropriation shall be fully funded by General Capital Improvement Fund. May I have a motion to introduce the ordinance?
So moved, Dash.
Second, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. In addition to that, may I have a motion to advertise notice of introduction in the Hampton Gazette on May 19th, 2021, for a public hearing on May 27th, 2021.
Motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, any questions on the bill list? If not, may I have a motion to pay the bills?
So moved. Second.
All right, roll call?
Brown,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Dash,
Yes.
Heist,
Yes.
Sefton,
Yes.
Timbers,
Yes.
Tricol,
Yes.
Wright,
Yes.
Ritchie.
Yes. All right, Mayor, is now your floor for any final comments.
Well, first of all, a couple dates for the August 14th is the Food Truck Festival. It starts at 3 p.m. this year. We had our first meeting on Tuesday. And the fireworks, which originally were July 10th, and now, because of the scheduling conflict, are July 17th. And it's the same procedure. Gates will close at 7, and they'll reopen at 7:30. Food stand will be there. Fireworks will be as well. And lastly, we have some pictures that you can't really see if you're on Zoom, but we have some contests for the Coalition for a Safe Community and the in cooperation with the schools and the NPP grant for the students of Cedar Creek were asked to write a poem and about something near and dear to their heart, and they will be judged on it, and the first prize gets $500. The community school students were asked to draw a place in Egg Harbor City that they like to visit, and they're on display over here, and the top 3 will get a prize. And then the Sprague School students were asked to do a self-portrait. So they did those. We have a lot of really good artists, I can tell you that. But these will be put up in the windows of some of the vacant buildings, and that was the purpose of it. When we had our NPP meetings, one of the major suggestions was to put something in those windows. So we participated with the school, and we got the children to do some artwork, and it's really lovely artwork. So after the contest, we're hoping to get that artwork up so everyone can enjoy it.
Can anybody vote? Like,
Yes, the public, please come in and vote.
because we have the vote, we have the thing.
Yeah, anybody here tonight can vote, or if you're, when's she taking it down then, Meg? I think she
I
said.
can find out tomorrow. She just set it up.
Yeah, okay,
tonight.
so next week, if anyone would like to come in and look at the artwork and vote on it, Meg and Jackie will give you a slip to vote. Take your time, look at the submissions and vote. They really did a good job. And that's just one example of what a great community we have and great relationships we formed with our stakeholders, the school, Cedar Creek, and everything else. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilwoman Heist?
Nothing.
Councilwoman Sefton?
Nothing.
Councilwoman Brown?
Nothing.
Councilman Dash?
I'd just like to say, as a member of council, I want to say how nice it is to work with everyone else on council. We all get along, we are all working towards the same goals. We put political parties aside and we're working to the same goal, and that's a really nice thing. Also, I'd like to just acknowledge Meg, Jackie, and Jody. until I was on city council, I had no idea how much you guys do. Clearly, the city runs with these women. So thank you very much. And just finally, Kim and Rich Heskey, I'd like to thank you for the wonderful work you're doing. My wife and I drove past the log cabin the day you were doing the flowers and thing, and we really appreciate it. So thank you very much. That's all I have.
Councilman Charco?
I have nothing.
Councilman Tempers? Councilman Wright?
Nothing.
Councilwoman Clark?
Nothing.
All right, the only thing I'd like to say is it's nice having the gang back in here. We're gonna make it a point moving forward to work out arrangements to hopefully get the public back in here. Obviously, you all see CDC guidelines that just came out today, so we gotta wait for executive orders to get lifted and so on and so forth. So I can tell you that I myself, I'm sure a lot of everybody, if not everyone, is looking forward to having the public back in. Full meetings. With that, I'd like to open it up to the public for any comment.
I have a comment.
Mr. Gianfranco.
Yes, who owns Avenue. I just said one thing about the form of government. Maybe I missed it in the beginning, but how did it come about that you started to look into this?
I said in the beginning, sir, that council asked me to look into the form of government.
Who on council asked you?
Almost all.
I'm not afraid. I did.
Okay, I'm just curious, and you said that.
I've never seen a form of government, so many council people.
Right.
That's, and no board.
So what you're saying is our form of government, is that legit now or it's not legit?
Well, what I'm saying is we have a very confused form of government.
But it's legal though.
Well, that remains to be seen. We function as a city.
Right.
But we are not really considered a city because we have 9 council people as opposed to 7.
Right.
At some point in time, we should have taken consideration into the statutory framework.
Right.
As the mayor mentioned, a small form of government would have been an option under the Faulkner Act. And I think Egg Harbor City does sort of proceed like a small form of government under the Faulkner Act. But we have no ordinance and have never had an ordinance actually adopting the Faulkner Act and small municipality form of government.
So my big question is though, this is it. So as an attorney professionally, you're saying that our form of government is basically not legal?
I didn't say that. As a matter of fact, the DCA in its letter of 1977 also hunted and said you are functioning perhaps as a city. And I also believe you are functioning perhaps as a city.
So what does that mean as a city?
City form of government is one of the 12 that municipalities in the state of New Jersey function under. However, in order to truly function as a city, the city would have had to adopt the statutory framework, which would allow it to conduct itself as a city. Now, back in the 1800s, when it was first formed in 1858, the city got a special charter from the state of New Jersey to operate as a municipality, as a municipal corporation. From 1858 until the early 1900s and through 1963, the city passed a bunch of resolutions and changed gradually its form of government without adopting any statutory framework.
But how do you change your form of government?
You do a referendum.
You know what I'm saying? You're not determined as a certain form of government right now. So you don't even know what form of government we are. We're one of the 12, you don't know exactly.
Well, you're operating, I think, as a city form of government, and you are designated as a special charter city form of government.
Okay, so you need to first adopt an ordinance to clarify.
That's why I recommend you have to look at what the city has done up until now. And it has to determine if what we have now is still working.
How do you change something if you don't have a form of government? Like you don't have a legitimate form of government now. So how do you change something that you don't already have?
We first have to determine if what you have is still
Wait,
what.
you can bring it up.
you determine that, you change it by referendum, which is what the voters.
After Mike's done.
This ambiguous form of government, they are permitted to do so. There's a provision in the city statute which says you can keep your form of government, but what you can't do is change any part of it.
Right,
So in other words,
but you have to determine your
can't-
ambiguous form of government first, or no?
of course,
That's what I'm saying, so you have
I'm
to,
already telling you, you have an ambiguous form of government.
right, but it's not specifically laid out in an ordinance form.
Well, it's,
Correct.
what we've always gone by is the Small Cities Act.
Right.
Okay, and it spells out specifically what the mayor's jobs are, what the council's jobs are, and that's what we go by. Whether it was adopted at a meeting that, the thousands of meetings we've had since, 1977, when the DCA looked into it, all the way back to the 1800s. Okay,
Well,
if it may or may not have been adopted, right?
Well, now, Mayor, I think what you're referring to is, and you talked about the minutes, but going through the minutes, there is no ordinance ever adopted by the city of Egg Harbor that would have made the city of Egg Harbor a small municipality pursuant to the Faulkner Act, which is
So-
what.
Well, we
needs to
didn't
happen.
adopt the Faulkner Act because we didn't have to, because we were incorporated. We were in that, like you mentioned, in that zone where we could keep what we had because we were incorporated in 1858. Okay,
Most
that's why we didn't
municipalities-
have to adopt the Faulkner Act, and we didn't. So, it's not like we're just, I guess the point is that we're a legitimate form of government because it specifically states in, I've emailed it to everybody numerous times, like what we go by. It's not like we don't go by anything.
Is the city allowed to have 9 council members right now?
Yeah, that says 9
Pursuant
councils
to
in the
statute,
charter.
pursuant to the city form of government, you are permitted to have 9 council members. It specifically states that in the statute. However, what it also states is that if you change to 7, or you go to change any other form of representation, you have to adopt the statute.
So, Mr. Trifall, you want to go down to 7, is that what you want to do, or what do you want to do? Why, I'm just
Well,
curious why you
Mr.
thought
Jim-
9 was so crazy, that's all.
Ms. Giampetti, I've been asked numerous times, like, dude, why do you have so many people?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
we have 5, we have 7, I said, that's how it's always been.
So
I asked her a question, and she goes, you're not like anybody else.
Mhm.
Okay, so just, we're talking with the solicitor and everything else, I'm like, what do we have?
Mhm.
Okay, like I said, the Faulkner Act, most of the, like,
So, but my point is that how do you change something when you don't even know what you have?
well, that's what the committee would be, to see if it is advisable or, acceptable to change.
So, no,
That's
what I'm
all.
sa- but the point that I'm making is that you don't even know if you're allowed to have 9 people, from what she said, because nothing's ever really been established in
Well, even
ordinance.
though it actually says that in what we go by.
No, but I'm saying, but what
It
you're
was
doing
just a
is,
question,
my
it was
point
just
is
a
that you're
question.
opening up a can of worms, because if you determine right now that this is not a legitimate form of government, and you want to
I
change
didn't
it.
determine anything.
No, I'm saying, but whatever, people could challenge every election that's gone on since 19 whatever. Right? They could challenge,
absolutely
they could challenge every resolution on here.
They absolutely could.
They could challenge,
is quite
like,
possible.
your whole city could be destroyed because you are trying
It's
to
an
make it.
exploratory thing to see.
I know, but what I'm saying is that you're trying, this is kind of what you're saying is that.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Jim Petty, that's not what I said. What I'm telling you is the statute
So,
that
just to
describes,
point-
no,
Go
let me finish.
Go ahead.
The statute that describes the city form of government specifically allows you to function as you are functioning now.
So we
You're
have a
wrong.
statute.
But
You
you said
are
it was
wrong when
ambiguous.
you say that every ordinance and every resolution is not
What she
able
said
to be
is-
passed. It can be passed. The form of government that you have is no longer viable. That's why the statute was passed in 1987 and 88 to bring in all the municipalities that had these old 1800 charters.
So we're the only
Egg
ones in
Harbor
the state.
City did not choose to do that. So, to answer your question further, it's not that you don't have a legitimate form of government, it's that you do not have a viable form of government, and the state allowed you to keep what you have in order to continue to function.
So you don't think 9 people is a viable form of government?
I don't make those decisions, sir. The governing body does, and then the electorate will do that if we choose to do by referendum.
So the state says we don't have a viable form of government.
The state says we should look at our form of government and see if we want to align it with what the statute says.
So I would like to know who up here thinks we have a viable form of government, who
Well,
doesn't.
we've been viable since 1858.
All the question is, there's nine councils.
It just seems to me that there's some kind of there's something besides this, like all of a sudden, it's like, why do we have 9 people and this is
I've always,
legitimate?
since I joined the council, I've always wondered why there's 9 people. I
Right.
really truly did. That's a lot of people, other
Well, did
places.
you ever, I mean, I know you wasn't involved in the process, but when you go to wards and districts, right? It's hard enough right now to find people to actually want to run for city council, right?
No,
Let
absolutely.
alone limit it to a small space in town where someone has to be picked out of this ward or district, right?
Right.
So you change the form of government, right? And now all of a sudden, nobody wants to run in that ward or district. You can't find anybody to run. And if you do, they may not be qualified, but if they don't, then what happens? What happens if you can't find people to run for city council from a ward or district to go to that? What happens?
Mr. Jim Petty, it sounds like you'd be a really good candidate.
No, I'm just curious what would happen if that.
It's a hypothetical. I can't answer that question. I don't know what would happen. That's one of the issues perhaps the committee should look at.
Right. Okay, I'm just curious, because it just seems like there's something deeper than this going on here.
That's an assumption.
No, that's my opinion. It's, you can call it what you want, but it's my opinion that, it's something like, I don't know.
Like I said, when I came up here, why did we have 9 people? It was always a question, because I've never seen so many council members.
Right. Okay.
And everything else, and I asked the solicitor about it.
Right.
Because I've had people who like, for an example, where I work, everything else like, dude, why do you have so many people? That's all. And I asked the question and,
Right. I mean, as long as I've lived here, which has been all my life, almost 55 years now, there's always been 9 people on city. You know what I mean? So
I would like to add something to your conversation.
I need you to say your name,
Hello?
name and address, please.
My name's Joe Keener. I live at 459 Chicago Avenue. I agree with some of your comments here
Joe
about
Keener,
what. What's that?
former Mayor Joe Keener.
Thanks, Nanette. Back during the time that I was involved in council and as mayor, I believe that there was too many councilmen. 9 councilmen, I think, is too many. And back, what you were saying here about the charter in 1868 is true. Egg Harbor City was one of 5 municipalities in the state that had an old charter from back during that time. And in 1987, the state of New Jersey passed the City Act of 1987, which allowed those 5 communities. I don't remember all of them. I know Beverly, New Jersey was one, Egg Harbor City, I believe Salem. I don't remember all of them, but at that time, prior to 1987, the city council was run by the mayor, and there was no president of council like we have today. What happened there was, as your solicitor has said, the city had a choice. And my understanding was that the city decided to adopt part of the City Act of 1987, which restructured the council into a president of council and the committee form that we have now. And also keep parts of the old form of government, which kept the 9 members of council all at large. If you adopt the City Act of 1987 at 100%, which I would prefer personally, but what it would do, it would make city council members continue to have 3-year terms, but there would be 6 council people, 3 from each side of town,
on 3-year terms running similar to what we do now, there would be one at-large council person that would run for a 4-year term opposite the mayor. So the mayor would run like the mayor does now when we have presidential elections. And then 2 years after that, the at-large councilman would run for a 4-year term. So you would always have, and actually, I believe it's Summers Point and Absecon have adopted that type of government. So it would be very similar to that, like a Faulkner Act, but it was done especially for the 5 communities in 1987 by the state of New Jersey.
So Joe, I have a question for you. The 3 from each side of town, would they run for election, or would they basically say, okay, I want to do it, and the first 3 to step up to the plate are the ones that do it?
You know, to transition from what you have now to something like that, I'm not sure. That would be a DCA question. But yeah, they would still run. I think you could have them run at large, where it would be the whole town, but it would be 7 councilmen. There would be 6 ward and district councilmen. If our city was bigger, you could have a councilman from each voting district, because we have 6 districts, and you could have a council person from each area.
Possible to find people.
But there's not enough population, I would think, for that to really, and to Mike's point earlier, it's really hard to find people that want to run anyway. And if you do that, you would have a really tough time filling the council seats.
So if you did that, what you said, 3 from each side, 6 people, right now, if we went to that, Ms. Clark, you couldn't be on here, Ms. Sefton, Mr. Ritchie, Mr. Dash, and Mr. Trithol, right? Only 3 of you could be up here now. So I'm just saying, like, those are the kind of consequences that you're facing by doing something like this. So it's right.
And we're willing to, you know, if it so choose.
Right. The other side of town.
Why?
But what happens to like where I live? I don't live on any side of
Yeah,
town.
but-
I'm at large.
I mean, I'm just saying there's consequently, better, you know,
Mike,
I would think about
Mike,
that.
you know, when I asked those questions, and she said, well, we never went to that. People lose their seats. I said, you know, no, you know, if it came down to it, that's
good.
Yeah, well, not good, but I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
You know, if it came down to my seat, okay.
Great.
You know,
Yeah.
whatever's best for the city, better for the city, if it determines that.
Okay. Great. I got you.
I don't think you would pick a particular council people to get off. I think everybody would have to rerun. That's the way I think it would have to be done. And then you would have to break it up into those wards or districts, however it was structured. But again, that's a DCA question, how it would go from there.
Yeah, we could run, but you know, they would pick whoever, like Joe and I live on Baltimore Avenue, across the street from each other. We primary against each other in our party.
Right.
And whoever did it, then that's how it is. I'm just saying, yes, we couldn't be on the same council
Right,
at the same
but
time.
you do see like trying to get people to run, how difficult it could be, right?
Understandable.
Okay, I'm just saying, like, those are some kind of things that, you know, you have to think about.
Yeah,
Well,
just
I mean-
to reduce the number by 2 people.
Right.
Like I said, Mike, this is just all theoretical and discussion right now, and it's a long-term process. You
Right.
know, I think Ms. Fossigan said it's quite a while. If it even comes about,
Yeah.
then it has to go to a vote. So the voters in the town can also say, you know, tough,
Right.
keep it as it is.
Like the mayor said, you might have to like spend 140,000 for an administrator to maybe do some of the work that the council people are doing now with 9 people, right?
Well, that's if it is. That's
Yeah,
if
no,
it is, you know.
I'm just saying, like, that could be something.
And like the mayor said, we did have an administrator one time. So it's, you know, it's not something unusual for this. town.
No, but it's a big hit to the taxes, right?
Understood.
140,000.
But
How many cents on the dollar?
that's putting, you know, the cart before the horse right now.
Okay, all right, I just, you know, it just seems like after all these years, all of a sudden this came up. It was kind of shocking to me. And then to hear that our government is, did you say ambiguous? Ambiguous. Like that doesn't even comprehend in my mind that since the beginning of this city, we've been running under, or at least since 87, whatever, under an ambiguous form of government. That doesn't comp in my head. Like I can't even figure that out, but whatever. Okay.
This is
Well, we-
Councilwoman Brown. I would like to weigh in for a second. This is not something that is being brought up all of a sudden. This is something that I was actually made aware of when I was running for council, just to clarify. It was just that we just kind of got to the bottom of it. This is not something that is suddenly brought up. This is something we had questions about before, probably before I was even on council. So just to clarify that.
Okay.
I can say it's the first I've heard of it, and this is my second term on council.
Right.
So I haven't heard anybody since I've been on council. This is my fourth year? I don't know. It's all running together at this point. But no one has ever said to me, why do you have 9 people on council?
I've had a few.
I've never had anybody ask me.
My question is, whether it's 9 or 7, what's gonna make that more efficient? If 7's gonna make it more efficient, why don't you go to 5? Why don't you go to 3?
You can determine.
Why don't you get rid of everyone and vote one person in there and they can run the whole city? I mean, to me, it's a moot point, really. 9's been running the city, I've been here 65 years, and it runs fine.
Yeah, I've been here 28 and never had
My biggest thing is Democrat, Republican, as long as everyone works together for the good of the city, that's all I care about, and I think that's what most residents care about.
Absolutely.
And that's not a lie. I don't care who's in office. I'm an independent. I vote for who I think is going to be the best person for this town.
And that's the way it should be. In a
And that's the
city.
way it should be. That's the way this country should be run, and you see what the mess is.
And just to add one more thing to this, about Rich saying, with the elections and stuff like that. As long as I've been here, and I'm just gonna say it right now, over the last 3 years, probably, I've seen the dirtiest run campaigns ever in this town. The lies, the deceit, the hatefulness, the downright dirty, nasty politics that have entered this small town of Egg Harbor City is disgusting. And I don't have to point fingers, or I don't have to ask anybody to raise their hand, but you know who you are. And it's disgusting. And now you're challenging the form of government, which again brings me to my conclusion of there's something else besides this. And that's all I got to say.
May I speak on this, please?
Go ahead, Ms. Gallo.
Okay. I was a journalist. I wrote for the Egg Harbor News for many years. And I don't know if your solicitor is aware, I'm sure Joe Keener is aware, that there was a commission study done, I guess in I don't know if it was the late 90s or the early 2000s. It was,
I believe,
when was it?
in the early 90s.
That long ago?
Yeah,
Oh my
I think
God.
it was. Yeah.
Well,
Jim McGarry was mayor.
In any case, the committee was a committee of the people. There were no council people on that committee. The committee was appointed by the mayor at the time, and the committee worked and investigated different forms of government. And the end result was that the committee recommended going to 7 members, a city form of government with a manager managing the city, not an administrator. There is a difference between the two. The Republican mayor at the time squashed it, and nothing was ever done. So if you ask my opinion about our form of government, I think 9 people up there is too many. A lot of them, just really aren't active in the community. At least I don't see them, and I'm pretty active in the community. So if I was making a recommendation, I would go with a commission form of government with 3 people who are totally in charge of their committees so they can get stuff done in this town. You guys are looking at stuff that are not problems when we have so many issues to deal with, and none of them are being addressed. So instead of worrying about the council people trying to change the form of government, why don't the council people worry about fixing what's wrong with this town? You got contests where kids in the community are drawing stuff to put into the vacant windows on Philadelphia Avenue. What has the council done to bring business to this town? Do you think changing the form of government is going to revitalize your community? I'm serious. You're looking at me like I'm crazy. Come on, let's get on the ball here. Let's fix what's wrong with the city and stop worrying about things that have nothing to do with a small town of 4,000 people. You know, our form of government is fine. You know, this isn't the time to go worrying about changing the form of government. And if it is, it should come from the people, not from the council. The citizens of this town should be the ones to petition for a different form of government because they feel like it's not working. I don't think you're going to find anybody out there willing to do that. I had a whole bunch of other stuff I was going to ask about, but is this a good time to do it, or you want to continue this discussion?
You can follow up with the questions you have.
Okay, first I wanted to thank John Rupp, Kim, and her husband, Rich, for all the work they did over at the log cabin, and let everyone know that the green team is arranging for the students at Cedar Creek High School to decorate a rain barrel so that there will be water there to water the plants that were planted. The other thing I wanted to do is thank Keith and the Public Works crew for grading Hay Road. It was really easy to get through there when we did our cleanup, and that area is absolutely gorgeous. If you're talking about spending money on parks and things like that, that would be a great asset for the city to promote that area as a fishing spot. And I mean, you could take your beach chair and sit there on the beach and enjoy the river flowing by. It's gorgeous. I'm sure a lot of people haven't been there. So I also wanted to know more about the grants, the one grant for the DCA. Did we put a number on that amount that you're asking for all those improvements at the campground?
They're both 500,000.
That's going to be 500.
500, $500,000.
And the second one is for 500 also?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're going to spend $1 million of grant money on the lake or the campground, which generates $56,000 in revenue a year. I know I hear the story that, well, fixing up the campground is going to generate revenue. But how much do you think it's going to generate? Has anybody done a cost analysis study to see how much spending $1 million on a campground where people from the town don't frequent, how that's going to benefit the residents? You got $1 million worth of grants that you could spend here where people live and help people enjoy their community, but you're spending it out at the campground, which is frequented by out-of-towners. In the hopes, and you know, like I've been following the lake for years and years and years, there's no money out there. You leased it to somebody because you couldn't handle it. How much do you generate in revenue from that operator?
Well, we usually generate, well, actually, I have to correct you, Nanette, the lake this year, because of COVID, only generated $78,000+ in revenue, but it normally pushes up towards 90 to 100. The campground, we get 10% of their revenue, and they usually give us about $6,000 a year. And at one time, Nanette, which you know as well as I do, they had seasonal campers in there from Egg Harbor City. That was the place to go. That was like a big thing way back in the day. People went out.
When my kid was little, there were a lot of people that camped out there for the summer.
So the improvements, you know, I don't think there's been too many improvements made out there, except when I had the Boy Scouts refurbish the Brader building, which was dilapidated and condemnable. And I think Joe Keener, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he built the bathhouses out there. I forget who, it might have been his uncle. I don't know.
How is, what water service do they have out there now? Is it well?
They have well water and they have a dump station.
Okay.
If you're gonna stay more than 2 days, they have something called a honey dipper, which is a wagon that the guy goes from camper to camper and RV to RV and sucks out the black waste and then takes it and dumps it into the dump station. If we put sewer out there, we're going to get larger units that are going to be willing to stay longer, and we're going to get less tent campers. The more we offer in hookups in the campsites, the more we can charge for those campsites.
And what is the cost of installing all these utilities?
We're
You
applying,
know how much that is?
we're applying.
$1 million?
No, we're applying for $500,000, and to correct a point from the beginning of your discussion here, we're applying for the same things for both grants. We're not applying for $1 million worth of improvements. The likelihood of, getting the grants is not very high, so we're applying for both in hopes that we would get one or the
All right, regarding the quads riding out past the lake, do we have quads for our police department?
No, we don't.
Okay. And where is the solar project want to go?
solar panels would be on carports, which would be at the transit hub parking lot opposite the train station.
Okay. And regarding the tennis courts, do you know how often they're used?
They're used a lot in that.
You think so? I've never seen anybody play tennis there, ever. I walk my dog down there and I never see anybody over there. What I would like to suggest is that you consider pickleball courts. They're all the rage right now. Every town's trying to put in pickleball courts. It's half the size of a tennis court. And kids could play it. They could have a pickleball team at school. And senior citizens like it because it's easy for seniors to do. And I wanted to recommend that the last time it was surfaced, but I didn't have that opportunity. But I would like you to look into pickleball court for Egg Harbor City, because I think it would be, it would attract people here. People will come here for that.
And that we could possibly do that next to the tennis courts. We have that field there and it does have a light. That would be something we could apply for in the future for a recreation grant. However, I have to disagree with you on the tennis courts. I'm over there all the time with my grandson. Over there, and there's always people there. And when we leave, somebody else comes usually. So they're just not there at the right
I've never seen anybody there. Resolution 14, the lot and block up for public auction. Do you have a street address for that, or at least the 100, 200 block of some street?
There are the two old Watson properties that were delivered to the city located in the industrial park.
They're in the industrial park?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if I got everything on my list. Got that. Okay, I got everything out on my list. It was quite long, 12 things. Thank you.
All right, there's nobody else from the public.
Yes, excuse me. This is Stephanie Keener, 459 Chicago Avenue. I have a question. Can someone give us an update on the resurfacing of the Chicago Avenue 300 block? That was supposed to be redone. Do you have a date for that they're actually going to come back and redo that?
We're still waiting on word on the funding mechanism from DOT. We keep reaching out to our local contact and he keeps telling us it's in the Trenton office. He's waiting for a response back from Trenton.
So we paid them and they're coming back to do it, or they did not get all their funds?
No, we're waiting for additional funding from DOT. They have advised that they will fund it. They're just waiting for the mechanism. They asked to submit a discretionary aid application. We did that. We're waiting for official word on that application.
Well, why do we have to pay additional money when it was not done correctly to begin with?
So we've had this discussion previously.
Well, I apologize. I have not heard it previously, but I've had like 3 or 4 people ask me and I don't know the answer.
Sure. So what happened was, as the contractor went to pave, the failure that occurred is down a foot or 2. That's well below anything that they disturbed during the course of construction. So essentially, there was underlying clay there that was not evident prior to reconstructing the road. Essentially, the asphalt surface keeps that clay dry. Once they
Right.
opened the project, that clay got saturated. They didn't put the clay there. They didn't know it was there. We didn't know it was there. And frankly, we did road cores, and the cores did not indicate any clay. But the presence of that clay, it's not really fair to blame the contractor and say, oh, it's all your fault. You should have, made the clay not rut the way that it did. So the additional funding will be just for the new surface course, the asphalt that has to go on top of what was already constructed.
Because some really low spots in there on the corners.
Yes. All of
Okay.
the grading for the road got destroyed when they were doing the project. As they were backing the trucks up to the roller, it was forming massive ruts out in front of the paver. They had the roller out on site trying to roll it back as flat as they could, but it's essentially like trying to roll a waterbed. When you roll on one side, it just pushes up on the others. So a lot of the rutting occurred in the middle. As they flattened it out, it sort of pushed up on the side. So the road lost the crown. There's a bunch of issues which you're sort of alluding to there. So the plan is to go back and profile mill at the curb line. So we'll cut down right at the curb line, so we'll be able to maintain the reveal there, and then reestablish the crown by adding, we'll mill 1.5 inches or 2 inches at the curb line. We'll add that material back there, and then we'll continue to overlay that through the middle. So what you'll end up with is it'll be higher at the middle than it is on the sides, which is what it's supposed to.
So it'll drain properly. I have one other question. There were multiple streets that I thought you put in a grant for, Ryan, when I was on city council, specifically the 300 block of 12th Terrace, the 100 block of 13th Terrace, and the 300 block of St. Louis Avenue. Did that never go through, or is there no funding, or did the city decide not to match the necessary funds for those streets to be paved?
We have approval from DOT. I'm not going to pretend to know the exact list of streets off the top of my head. We did previously provide a proposal for that. We actually have the next round of funding as well, which is the 100 and 200 blocks of Chicago Avenue. So we will be looking to put them out sooner than later. But,
okay. And when I was on council, we also promised Mrs. Mangold, I think she's the 300 block of London Avenue. Is that right? Or London, Liverpool, that we would do something in front of her house where the curb is, it's all gone. I mean, it's dirt there when you pull up into her property. So I think you would remember that, Ryan. She came up many times and was not irate, but disturbed over the fact that her street was so dangerous. It's the word I'll use. And I thought that we put the money in the budget to pave that street. Maybe the mayor recalls that.
Which one was it, Steph?
Mrs. Mangold.
I don't think it was her. I think it's Lacey that worked at Brickwork Demo. I think her name.
Is it, you said London Avenue?
Is that her street, London, or is it Liverpool?
I think it's
Liverpool
Liverpool.
Avenue, right?
I'm pretty sure it's Liverpool.
It is Liverpool Avenue.
Council voted to bond to do that street because we had residents in here one evening complaining, and I don't blame them. It's almost the same situation on Washington Avenue where the side of the street is actually dirt now, it's not even a street. And in the time, it gets iced up. And it's definitely Liverpool Avenue because Brenda Root was in here too. She was complaining. And we did bond to do it, and for some unknown reason, it never got done. Well, they were supposed to bond to do it, but for some unknown reason, it went by the wayside.
And one other question, there are several homes in Egg Harbor City that specifically on Cincinnati Avenue, there are 2 of them there that are falling in. What's code doing about that? I mean, I read on Facebook where the roof fell in on some of them. There's dirt piles. I'm not sure what the status is of those houses. What's code doing about that? Mr. Dash, I know you're the chairperson of code. Have you addressed any of those at all?
Code enforcement is working on those items.
Yeah, Steph, that's the reason the roof is like that, because it was the person that owns it was beginning to demolish it, yet he didn't have a permit to demolish, so he was asked to stop.
Okay.
Has not been addressed since then that I know of, but I have been on that consistently because if I had to live next door to that, and that's usually how I make decisions, by would I like to live next to a place like that? And no, I wouldn't. I would be
Well,
knocking on the window all day until something got done about that. But, you know, with everything else, you know, things have just gotten backed up, but they are working on it.
okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions. Everybody have a good night.
Steph, I have something with the terraces. Paving the terraces, we have to think about American Water coming in and redoing a lot of our piping and our sewer because a lot of it is very old. And for us to put the money in to redo terraces and then to come in and then have to tear up that terrace to replace the piping, that's something that we really need to think about before we do it. Because if they're gonna tear up the road, they're gonna repair the road, and it's not gonna cost us anything. So that's something we have to think about when we do pick the roads, you know, and that we want to have resurfaced.
Yeah, that is a good point. I forgot about that when we were talking earlier, but we did have that discussion that we do currently have funding to repave a couple of terraces, but we do want to check with New Jersey American to make sure that they're not in the high priority areas for them.
Right.
Because if they're gonna do it in the next 5 years, there's no sense us doing it right now.
All right, thank you, Ms. Keener.
You're welcome.
That's New Orleans Ave. I just have two quick questions. I just wanted to find out, on New Orleans Avenue, you said they were going to sell 2 properties. I never understood. I don't know where that is.
It's the section of New Orleans Avenue between Fear Street and there's 3 lots that can be subdivided there that face the school.
Oh.
And back up to Antwerp Avenue, or the terrace, I'm sorry, right, Brian, the terrace? Or the-
Yeah, the properties back up to the terrace. They face the paved portion of New Orleans Avenue that is the border for the school.
Thank you. And there's one other question I wanted to ask you. As far as the solar,
Mhm.
will you be able to, will that be a shelter for the cars parking there? Will they be able to park under it?
Yeah, the minimum height on their installations is 14 feet, which is the DOT height. If you can't fit under 14 feet, you can't drive on the expressway. So you should be okay.
And we will have charging stations for electric cars out there. I forget, what did they say?
Yeah, we talked about the potential to add 5 electric charging stations out there as through part of the project. So it would be 15 years of maintenance and upkeep and all, you know, as part of that.
Along with the monitor in City Hall where you can come in and see what the city is doing.
Yes.
I didn't hear that.
So along with a monitor in City Hall where you can come in on a daily basis or at your leisure to see what the city's actually seeing.
Yeah, and a link on the city's website as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep. All right, anybody else from the public?
Yeah, I have one question. A couple of years ago, there was like a survey that was sent around to choose different facades for the buildings on Philadelphia Avenue to try to revitalize the city. Like I don't remember how many blocks it was, 100, 200 block, but has anything else been done with that, or did it get denied or dropped, or is it moved forward with that?
Actually, that's an NPP project. We have money available, but nobody really applied for it. We were giving grants to do that. And then COVID hit, so everything went into COVID relief, but we did have it in place that we were gonna give grants to fix up the building. That last time it was done was an NPP grant too, but I think it was administered by the county. I'm not sure. Was it, Brian?
I think so, yeah.
That would be something nice to follow up on, because it sounded like a great idea if we could, you know, improve the facades on the front of the businesses on, you know, Philadelphia Avenue. That could help to revitalize the city and maybe draw businesses and people. Just an idea to follow up on that.
So privately owned businesses, so we can offer the people grants to apply for the grant to redo their business, but for the city to go in and redo the front of a business of a privately owned business, then we're gonna have other taxpayers say, well, come put siding on my house. You know,
Okay, yeah, I forgot that's how it works. So, I mean, I guess could it still be followed up with the business people? Like, hey, we got this grant money available. Could somebody, you know, spearhead that to try to revitalize the city, at least give the people, you know, has it been followed up on? Is it being worked?
I don't think as of yet, because we're just getting out of the COVID crunch.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Just for the record, could you state your name and address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Tracy Mulheron, 314 Arago Street.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's all, thanks.
Do they have, Kim has New Orleans Avenue, do they have grants for startup businesses. And I, 'cause I know at one time they had something for women, like startup businesses, and I remember.
That grant's still available,
Is that still
as
available?
far as I know, a couple months ago.
Is it through the county?
I don't know where it's through, but I had a colleague said it was still available. I don't know what avenue you have to go. I guess you would just have to look.
I'm just wondering if we, try to attract new businesses possibly that way. I mean, when they have already, I don't know.
Well, there's been
Maybe in
several
schools.
businesses that wanted to come into Egg Harbor City. I just had a call yesterday from a young lady who grew up in Egg Harbor City. She wants to have a seafood restaurant in Egg Harbor City. But unfortunately, the conditions of some of the buildings that could facilitate a restaurant are dilapidated. Saying that word, but they're not usable, and they can't be usable in the near future. And, that's why I tried to get that ordinance passed for business owners, or for people who own buildings that are business people that aren't doing anything with them, add it to the vacant, the vacant project that we have now through the county, just to add the businesses on that are just sitting there not being taken care of. But council didn't want to do that.
All right. Anybody else, any comments from the public?
That would have been very good.
The information is available at the tax office for the people that own the buildings.
I'm sorry.
The information for the people that own the buildings is available at the tax office.
Okay.
It's public record.
It's public record.
Oh, yeah.
All right. If there's no other comments from the public, may I have a motion to close public comment, please? Second.
Second, Brown.
All right. Thank you for your attendance. I look forward to seeing everyone at the next meeting. I have a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion.
Second, please. All in favor?
Second, aye.